right, here we are again. It's time for another episode of the Men of Iron podcast. So thanks for joining us today. My name is Scott Davis, coming to you from Tampa, Florida. And we've been talking about influence. And even though this podcast drops every Monday morning, so you may be listening to me on Monday morning. If you are, good Monday morning to you. But it could be a Tuesday evening or a Thursday afternoon or a Saturday, whatever day, whatever time it is. Hey, thanks for joining us on this podcast. This month of November, I've been talking to you about influence. And the first Monday, we actually talked about influence defined. And we gave a little definition of what influence actually is. And it reads something like this. It's the power or ability to change or affect someone or something, especially the power to cause changes without directly forcing those changes to happen. And we talked about it's kind of like a force, right? You're your own force. That's your influence, and you're causing change to happen without even really trying. And so during that week, I challenged you also to think about what it is or who it is that's the biggest influence or the influencing agent in your life right now. And I challenge you to think about that. Think about what or who is influencing you and the decisions you make. Then in week 2, we came back and we talked about influence realized and the fact that we must realize that each of us are influencers to a special circle of people that God has dropped us right in the middle of. We are the people that are closest to us are the ones that we usually influence the most. And that week, last week, I challenged you to make a simple list of those people's names, like either in the notes on your phone or just write it down, do something, but make that list because it's important for us to know and understand and identify who those people are that are in our circle, the circle of influence that we have. So we have a definition. We've realized that we actually are influencers to someone, somewhere. And so this week, I want to go a little bit further, and I want to talk about influence specialized. Today, I want you to ask yourself the question, what area am I specifically or specially gifted in to be an influence on others? So, how has God designed me? What is God's divine design in me? John Maxwell talks about the plant life, and he says every seed has the ability to produce more of what's on the inside of it. And we, too, have the ability to reproduce what's on the inside of us as far as leadership and influence goes. But we must know how that we are gifted or specially designed by God to make that influence happen intentionally. So what is inside of us that we are supposed to use for influence for God's kingdom? I got to thinking about that, the individuality and the specialization of every person, how we're so different. It brought to my memory a book that I bought several years ago, written by Pastor Keith Craft. He's the pastor of Elevate Life Church out in Frisco, Texas. And he wrote this book called Your Divine Fingerprint, the force that makes you unstoppable. And in this case, I want to say it's the force that makes you different or special. And in that book, he writes about his father being a Dallas police officer, James Craft, in the 1960s, and he was promoted to a detective that was over the fingerprinting department. And in this book, Keith writes a chapter called Your 1%. Your 1% difference is a deposit of God's glory that makes you great. And so think about that. He goes on to explain that our fingerprints have the uncanny ability to remain and regenerate. A lot of stuff in there about fingerprints that drove me to remember how special each person is. Nobody has the same fingerprints. Nobody ever has. Nobody ever will. It says they begin to appear on us at 3 months old. It also says it's the last thing to disappear on us after we die. That's pretty crazy. Fingerprinting has been commonly used to gather forensic evidence for a long, long time. And now DNA has come on the scene in investigations for criminal activity or crimes that's been committed. There's DNA that can be collected and fingerprints that can be collected, and he even talks about the iris of our eye can also be an identifier for people because they're different. And our human mapping system or process also proves that people worldwide, and he says this, are essentially 99% alike. And if all people on the earth are 99% the same, then the DNA and fingerprints and the irises of our eyes prove our individuality. Regardless of how you look at it, we're different. We're all different. But that difference is our unique ability to be an influence. That's what I want you to think about. Specialized differences that make us unique. And it's the way God designed us, because he knew exactly the circle of people that we would have in our life that would need to have influence for the kingdom. And so he made us this special way, and there's a reason for our uniqueness. He goes on to describe some things about DNA that I thought was pretty remarkable. It's our human code right inside our body at the cellular level. Some facts about DNA is we're composed of trillions of cells, our bodies are. Each cell contains 46 chromosomes. If you put them in the size of an aspirin pill, our DNA would be 109 football fields long. Each chromosome has 2 molecules of DNA, and it's composed of 3 billion subunits. That's crazy. It says if you pulled out the DNA from a single human cell and stretched it out, it would be 9 feet long, almost the length of a car. And all these facts are true for all of us, and it makes us unique individuals. That's who we are. That's how God created us. The Bible tells us that we are designed and made in his image, and yet he's given us that 1% of difference or uniqueness on purpose so we could reach the world or the circle of influence around us. We bring to every relationship, every encounter, and every experience a unique perspective and a unique set of abilities that we've been designed and engineered and gifted by God to bring. That's amazing. That's incredible. God downloaded all of this into each one of us so that we could be an influence in our society and the people around us. Pretty incredible, isn't it? So I want you to think about that today, that you are special. You are specially made, specially created to have influence in this world. And when you operate in your giftedness and the way that God has made you, once you discover what that is, you can then see and begin to be intentional about that influence. I mean, if you need further convincing, listen to Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16, where King David writes about God. It says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me were written down in your book." Now that's pretty incredible. That tells us that God made us specifically. He saw us before we were ever born, and he even wrote down every day of our life in his book. So how has God specifically created you? What is your special influence? Have you ever thought about that? I know some of you guys out there listening right now are thinking, what? I've never thought of that in my life, but I want you to think about it. I want you to think about the truth of the scripture that I just read you, that God made you and designed you and wrote your days down in his book on purpose with special gifts, special talents, a unique personality, just so you could have influence in the circle of people that he has placed you in. I'm talking about kingdom impact influence in that circle of people. That's why you were made. Sometimes we get caught up in the facts of thinking that we were made special just for ourselves, so we could have a career, so we could make money, so we could do this or do that. But it's not about us at all. God created us for others. He made us special for the people that are around us. It's almost like God had a plan, a specific plan for our life, doesn't it? Imagine that. Even God created us specifically to influence and bring impact to people closest to us, because Jeremiah 29:11, remember what that says: "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So there it is again in God's Word. He has given us His plan for our future, to have a hope. He created us specifically on purpose. And we can influence other people, and other people in our circle can also influence us and teach us things. That's the way God created this whole web. Isn't that amazing how He does that? So each one of us can grow and be influenced by each other. That's why I love our theme verse of Proverbs 27:17, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." That's what it's all about. Using our gifts, talents, and abilities, the way God created us, to sharpen each other. I think that's why I love meeting new people so much. I can't wait to get to know you and learn what you know. I want to know what you know. Isn't that crazy? And people, believe it or not, other people in your circle want to know what you know. That's called influence. That's how we influence other people. And we talked about that through these other words. That's important about influence is authenticity, humility, integrity, and consistency. We talked about how all of those equals trust or builds trust in people. They can trust you when you live this way, and then therefore you have influence, and you have the way that you were created and designed to make that happen. This is why mentorship is so vitally important in today's culture. Men, this is why we at Men of Iron want to see every man's life influenced and impacted through mentorships. This is how we change a culture one man at a time. When every man realizes they can be a specialized influence to the circle of people around him, cultures begin to change. Men's cultures and then the entire culture of our world can change. This is when we make kingdom-lasting impact on our churches, our communities, our homes, our workplaces. Every aspect of our life is influenced when we realize we are specially influenced by God, specially designed, specially created to be that influence. So how has God designed you? How has He designed you to reach that circle of influence and make a kingdom impact? I want you to take some time this week. Here's your challenge. Take some time this week. Read those scriptures through again. That's Psalm chapter 139, verses 13 through 16, and Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. Then I want you to really, really think about who God has created you to be, and how that 1% difference that's in you can be used to influence those around you and make a lasting impact in their lives. We've defined influence. We have realized every person has influence, and today we have realized that our influence is special. It's specialized, created just for us. Hey, thanks for joining me again on the Men of Iron podcast. Tune in next week as we close out the topic of influence by discussing it like influence capitalized. Have a great week, guys. I'll see you right here again next week on the Men of Iron podcast. Peace.